A while back I posted a day in the life of a composer video, and I've tried to do a follow-up several times, and the day always ends up being super unproductive, so I've abandoned it. But today what I want to show you is a different side of being a composer, and that's what it looks like to put together your music into sheet music form. So over the past 3 or 4 days I've been printing a bunch of stuff because I'm getting ready to head to a band director convention here in Arkansas, and I want to have my music out there so people can see it. Now I already have a bunch of music printed up, but I've changed my printing so that I can do it all at home. I used to have to go to FedEx to get my covers printed up, and they looked really great, but they came out to like $10 a piece, and it's hard to make any money if you're spending $10 just to get a score printed. So now I'm printing everything at home. It's like a fraction of the price to do. So I'm going to bring you along as I print parts for like concert band and percussion ensemble music, as well as scores. I've already done a lot of printing. There's not much to see there other than it really helps to have the right printing program, and I have a really cool one called Create Booklet 2 that I found for Mac, and all I have to do is just drag my PDF file into it and it turns it into a booklet and I print it, and it's that easy. So I have a whole bunch of folding and binding to do, and I'm going to show you how that all works and what the final product looks like. By the way, because I'm a self-publishing composer, I sell all of this myself through my website, drewmorrismusic.com. You can go there to check it out. Alright, so let me show you how it's done. But before we do that, let me show you what my studio looks like when I'm in printing mode. It's a disaster area. By the way, I normally shoot in manual mode on my camera whenever I'm doing these talking heads, but that makes it a big pain because I'm going to turn off these fancy lights whenever I get to work, and it's just going to be on intelligent auto on my camera, so I hope you don't mind. Maybe it's better quality. I don't know. We'll find out together. So the actual printing area is not too bad, and I have my sewing table that I use for paper storage that also doubles as a secondary workspace. And here's my new LaserJet printer, an HP 5225, some sort. I have the auto duplex version. And if we move on from this area, this stack right here is all of the things that I printed that went wrong. Here's some things that I just need to move out of the way. You might notice some of my synthesizers and tape machines peeking out from underneath there because I had to clear off the table. For this, I currently use 28-pound 11 by 17 and 8.5 by 11 inch paper. And I'm currently using just yellow cardstock because my company's name is Yellow Envelope Publications. I'd like to find some glossy cardstock, but at this point all I have is matte. So parts will either come just one up on a set of 8.5 by 11 inch paper, sometimes two up, even two-sided. And for these, I bought a scoring board that I thought would help for folding things, but I've actually found that the easiest thing to do is literally just to put this together and fold it using this, a paper folder. So I have two types of scores that I print here at home. I have coil bound and I have staple bound. So I bought this thing, this coil binding machine. I'm not sure if it's in focus or not. Yeah, and all you do is you stick the things in here and you pull this down and it puts a bunch of holes that you can run the coils in. So this works great for landscape orientation scores, but whenever I have portrait scores, sometimes it's just easier to use a staple. So I just bought one of these guys, and you just print this stuff in 11 by 17 format, you staple it and you fold it. So you see I have two different styles. This is what I used to print, which was so expensive to print at FedEx, but it's nice and glossy and I really dig it. But this has all the information that you need right across the top. What the grade is, what the instrumentation is, how long it is, and how many percussion it requires, because I write stuff for a lot of percussion. Anyway, so, I don't know. I like the look of this and the glossy feel, but it's way more expensive, and I can do this way more affordably, which means that I don't have to feel like I have to charge an arm and a leg just to break even whenever I sell stuff. One negative thing about doing all this printing at home in such a small room is that laser printer gets really hot because it's literally like heating up to fuse the toner to the paper. And I can't leave my door open because Pumpkin, my cat, will come in and get all over everything, so I have to leave the door shut. So I've tried a couple different ways to staple bind a score in the past, but the one I did when I was just testing this new setup the other day seemed to work the best, and it's all because of this thing, a paper folder. I got this with a bookbinding kit because I wanted to make my own leather-bound, well, faux leather-bound journals, and it turns out that this might be the most valuable thing in my arsenal. So, what I do is basically take these, try to get them together as best as I can using some binder clips, and then I use this edge right here of my paper cutter and then get them as tight as they can together, and then just put a crease in it. Before I used to staple first, but I feel like this gave me a much better product. And then I just very carefully take my super long stapler, fold this down, line it up. I always find it's best to start with the middle staple so you can measure off of it, but I did not do that this time. There you go. I don't know if this is going to focus on it, but if you see that, I just line it up perfectly with it, and then I'm good to go. Take the binder clips off, maybe give it one last fold, and it's done. And the edges are pretty good, you know. One of these days, I'd like to get one of those pneumatic paper cutters so that I can perfectly get this edge done. But there you go. That's it. Takes a few extra steps than taking it to FedEx and just letting them do it, but it's a lot cheaper. By the way, nothing against FedEx. I've printed some really good stuff there. So while we're in folding mode, I'm going to go ahead and move over to these parts. And I know there's a bunch of them, but it's kind of brainless work, so it gives me a chance to catch up on podcasts. By the way, I want to thank Nicole Chamberlain. You can find her on YouTube and Twitter and I think Twitch as Nikki Notes with 2 Ks. She was the one that I first heard mention using one of these bone folders or whatever they're called. She's also the one that put me on the trail of the laser printer I picked. She has a pretty cool video about putting together sheet music too if you want to check that out after this. I'll put a link down to her various accounts down in the description. But yeah, put on a podcast and let's do some folding. Today I'm listening to Critical Role. So it took me 11 minutes to get these parts folded, and I've got the score, and it's done. Well, I finished all the portrait orientation staple bound scores, but now it's time to start my folder for my set and score of concert band music. It's a little complicated because sometimes my music is very thin because pieces are printed on letter size paper, one-sided, and sometimes it's very thick because I'm printing on 11 by 17 folded over. This piece happens to be the harder of the two because if I have one like this, I can just basically fold the piece over it and it's the perfect size. Because this is about 1 inch and this paper is about 1 inch wider. So for this, I'm going to have to cut off just a little bit on each side, like ½ an inch, I think. So let's set the scoring board aside because I think it might be easier if I do the cut first. I feel like I just need about 1/4 inch cut off. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is use this scoring board, which is an awesome invention. So I should be able to fold this over now. Put this and this together. Put it in like this. Look at that. It's like a perfect fit. Now you see I still have an extra bit right here. So I'm going to cut off the bottom inch. See, this would be a lot easier if I could buy 11 by 18 paper, but I have to buy 12 by 18 paper. So I line this up to cut off 1 inch. I believe I have my first 100% in-house printed set and score for Yellow Envelope Publications and Drew Morris Music. Got the folder, I've got the score, and all the parts ready for a concert band director to buy and hand directly out to their band. But now it's time to start my coil binding. So when I'm making these, I could probably do the whole thing all at once, but I typically do the cover and then the guts. By the way, this is how I typically bind my percussion ensembles, because they normally have less stabs, so it just seems more efficient. I haven't done one of these in a long time. Oh, I forgot. Yeah, I have to change it because I get this partial one right here. This handle's getting loose. I lint it out once and it came back super loose. So there you go. So I use these coils, and this machine has this fancy doodad that'll spin for me, and I can just get it started and put it on there and it goes zzz. But I feel like it takes so long to get it started. And I'm never working in a volume that's like super high, so I just do it myself. Just get the first part in there and just sit here. This came with a special set of crimping pliers, but I never got those back from that time I lint this thing out. So I just use normal pliers and scissors. I put this through, and I need to oil these or something. You just grab the edge, put a turn on it so that it can't come back out. Come down here, put one on the other side. Put a crimp down here, and we're done. Lays flat. Autofocus is sure hunting today. So one down, like another 5 or 6 to go. Don't have enough left here, so I have to grab one. A long time ago, I bought a bunch of these coils in bulk, and they came really long. Okay, that one's messed up. Pull one from here. See, it's this giant box. And apparently they all got tangled. This will probably be enough to finish me out, but I'm going to try to pull another one out just to be safe. Yes, that's exactly what I wanted. Time to go back into production mode, listening to podcasts. I'm all done with my percussion scores. So now it's time to just go through and do a bunch more folding of parts. I think I have 7 more sets of parts that I need to fold. Well, before I was able to get back to folding, my wife came in and said our air conditioner was leaking. And it's been about an hour since that, and our air conditioning cut out. It's like leaking, pooling on the ground. Fortunately, the landlord got back to us pretty quick, and he's trying to get it sorted out for us. But yeah, it's in the hundreds, so this is a fun time for that. But the fact that the air conditioning went out doesn't change the fact that I have a convention in a few days, so I better get back to folding. So some time has passed since I last talked to you, and now that I'm past the convention that I was initially preparing for, it's time to ratchet things up. Get a bunch of music printed up, and start dealing with distributors. But there's one thing that I didn't necessarily take into account about starting my own self-publishing company, because a couple years ago, whenever I decided I wanted to try self-publishing, I'd only ever had a small printer and maybe like one package of paper laying around the office. But whenever you start dealing with the amount of paper you need to print for band pieces of music, not only do you need that, you need a bigger printer, you need bigger paper, and you need more types of it. So let me show you what I'm dealing with right now. So I've got my 8.5 by 11 28-pound paper in bulk, well, what I consider bulk. I've got my 11 by 17 paper in 28 pound, and then I've got my cardstock. And then I've also just got my pre-printed music back there. And then I've got 20-pound paper for my test prints and just random things that I don't need to print on this expensive paper. So it would be one thing if I knew what sort of paper and everything I wanted to use right from the beginning, but I've gone through a bunch of different formats. And I started with all white, and now I've pivoted over to yellow to lean into my yellow envelope publications. And I was just trying to price some yellow envelopes today, and those are not cheap. So yeah, if you decide you want to get into self-publishing, make sure you have the space for paper and printers. And, you know, eventually I'm going to also need to have space for inventory. So doing this in a 1,000 square foot rental house might not have been the smartest idea on my part. So it's kind of hard to believe, but I think I finally have my setup down. I can print my parts here. I can print my scores, the covers and the guts of the score. I can bind it, and I can print my folders on super oversized paper, and all in-house. So now that I can do this and get it into some retailers, I've got a lot of printing to do. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you've been curious about how to get into self-publishing sheet music yourself, if you have any questions, let me know down in the comments. Reach out. You can find ways to contact me in the description as well. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.